Hello everybody, welcome to episode 202 of Show Fever. Today we'll be going over the Chūnin exams arc of the original Naruto manga. Now with this one, I'm doing a little bit more of a review rather than a story recap because this is the largest arc in all of Naruto. And I mean, if you're here and you're interested in Naruto, I bet you've probably already known what goes on in the Chūnin exams. So I'm just kind of yap about like how my reread of it was. But I'll also give a very basic overview of the story. So Chūnin exam starts off, we see as it is introduced, this Chūnin exams is essentially the advancing exam beginning. So if they pass Chūnin exams, they become Chūnin, which is the next level in the ninja hierarchy. And we see as all of Team 7 is given an invitation, and ultimately Sakura is a bit apprehensive about it, but ultimately she ends up showing up to the first part of the Chūnin exams, where we see that everyone is given an examination. So here, I'll kind of introduce all the big characters. So the antagonists we have are Kabuto and Orochimaru, who will be one of the major antagonists for the rest of the series almost. Well, at least until he is killed, essentially, in Naruto Shippuden. But yeah, so with this, we are introduced to Orochimaru, Kabuto, who's one of his henchmen, the Otonin, who are the sound ninja, and the grass ninja are also kind of accomplices of Orochimaru. Then for kind of also, Gaara is kind of an antagonist, and Kankuro and Tamari, who are the ninjas from the village of Sand, they were ultimately here to attack Konoha in the Chūnin exams, so they are antagonists as well, but they're not. Later on, they become allies. And so, we also, for our kind of new set of newcomers, we have obviously Team 7, then we have Rock Lee, Tenten, Neji Hyuga, then we have Shikamaru Nara, Ino Yamanaka, and then Choji Akimichi. Then we have Shino Aburame, Hinata Hyuga, and Kiba. I can't remember what Kiba's last name is, but Kiba's the one with the cool dog Akamaru. But yeah, and I think that's all the major new ones we get introduced to. Yeah, that's the big, I guess, 4 Konoha teams we have now. So, with this, I just kind of get into the first exam. So the first exam is they actually take a test. They take a physical test with 10 questions, and the final 10th question is not on there. And this test is very difficult, but it was ultimately meant to test these young ninjas' ability to spy without getting caught and to acquire information without getting caught, because everyone around here was observing them, and if they got caught cheating, they ultimately got kicked out and failed. And so, with this, we see as a lot of people end up being kicked out, but ultimately everyone kind of gets through, even though Naruto is heavily struggling. And then ultimately we see as Ibiki, who is the, proctor of this test, ultimately ends up saying, yo, for the 10th question, you either got to agree and leave now and take the Chūnin exams next year, or if you get this question wrong, then you will never be able to take the Chūnin exams again. And we see as Sakura is very worried about Naruto, but ultimately Naruto's like, no, I'm staying in. And so that everyone else who is planning on leaving leaves. Then we see as Ibiki reveals, in fact, that was a test in and of itself. There's not a 10th question. That was just to test their resolve. And ultimately all of them who stayed passed. And all of the Konoha and the Sunukagore, or whatever they're called, the Sand Ninjas, and the Otonin, and all of them passed. So then we ultimately end up going into the second stage, which is the Forest of Death. And this is proctored by a woman by the name of Anko. Now, Anko has a prior relationship to Orochimaru. Orochimaru was her mentor for a time, but ultimately he had no use for her, so he discarded her. And so we see as she becomes knowledgeable, becomes privy to the idea, well, to the fact that Orochimaru is here and he is trying to alter these Chūnin exams somehow. And so we see as they end up reporting, the Anbu and Anko end up reporting back to the Hokage, where they're like, yo, Orochimaru's doing stuff here. And at first, we see as Anko actually has a run-in with Orochimaru where they fight, but ultimately Orochimaru ends up coming out on top. Then we see as Orochimaru runs into his main, I guess, target in all this, and that is Sasuke. He is here to groom Sasuke into becoming his new body, essentially, because he wants the Sharingan and the Uchiha blood. So we see as all this plays out, ultimately, we see as Naruto actually helps out a lot in this. He's able to block, I believe his name's Munda or Mabunda. He's the summon for Orochimaru. He's like Gamabunta for Jiraiya, or Katsuyu for Tsunade. But yeah, so we see as ultimately Naruto goes into his one-tail code form, and he's able to block off an attack by Munda, or whatever his name is, and protect Sasuke. And ultimately he calls out Sasuke for being a chicken, but Sasuke then gets back and starts fighting a little bit more. Naruto starts fighting, but ultimately before Orochimaru ends up heading off, he's able to implant a curse mark in Sasuke's neck. Now this curse mark activates upon the use of chakra within the individual who is cursed by it. However, it does give them immense power as well, and it gives them a very bloodlusted drive, as we see later on when Sakura, when defending Sasuke, ultimately runs into some Otonin where she has to defend him, and ultimately Sasuke ends up waking up after Rock Lee helps Sakura fight them off. And once he wakes up, he is very essentially bloodlust, and he deals with them very brutally. But yeah, so ultimately, nothing else super important happens for this part of the stage. We see as Kabuto helps Naruto and them get through this, because Kabuto has the initiative of, well, not initiative, but the, I guess, goal of seeing Sasuke through so that Orochimaru can have a chance to acquire him once more. So this ultimately then leads into the third stage, where we see as the very interesting part of the Chūnin exams begin. The Forest of Death is super interesting. It was honestly, in the anime, it's genuinely like a scary part, especially when they did with Orochimaru. So yeah, that part is genuinely good, but then when we get into like the meat and potatoes of the Chūnin exams, what makes the Chūnin exams so renowned? And that is the preliminary fights. Now, the third part of the Chūnin exams is a tournament-style arrangement, kind of like the Tenkaichi Budokai, where each of the ninja are faced up against each other, all those who qualified. I believe there was 30, yeah, I think. There was either 30 or no, it was somewhere between 30 and 21. I don't know why I'm thinking of that. But yeah, so we see ultimately as they end up getting into the Chūnin exams, and, well, not the Chūnin exams, but the preliminaries. And the preliminaries play out very cool. So we have a lot of kind of underwhelming fights. Like Sasuke has to fight one of the Otonin, or not really the Otonin, but one of the Konoha ninjas who are under the tutelage of Orochimaru, control of Orochimaru actually. And he does pretty well with this. He's not allowed to use his Sharingan in this battle because that would then activate the curse mark, and he would have to be taken out of the Chūnin exams. And he does this, and he ultimately ends up copying some of Rock Lee's moves that he saw earlier on in the arc. And he used this to defeat the ninja. Then, I kind of discussed what my favorite fights were. I really did enjoy Shino's fight, because Shino, he had some aura in his fight. But I think I'll discuss my top 3 favorite fights. So I'd say in third place, I would have... Actually, no. After having rewatched this, I had a tie for first. So I'll put my third place one. My third place one is Sakura versus Ino. Now, previously, I wasn't a big fan of this fight. However, after rereading it, I'm like, dang, that's pretty good, especially the emotional connotation with Sakura and Ino having been previous very close friends, and Ino being responsible for Sakura kind of blooming as a child to become more of a sociable and outgoing individual. And seeing them fight and ultimately seeing Sakura both of them so hungry to triumph over the other, though they have a deep relationship, is really cool to see. I really enjoyed this fight, and it was super cool. Like, it was cool to see how it concluded and all that. But yeah, then I'd say my third place fight is probably... No, my second place fight is probably Naruto versus Kiba. Now, this fight shows Naruto's, battle IQ almost at its fullest. This is a phenomenal fight in terms of Naruto, because Naruto should have lost this fight by all means. However, he used his Shadow Clone Jutsu in a very intuitive manner, which allowed him to triumph over Kiba intellectually, and he won because of this. So, we then see my tied for first and tied for first. I think I would discuss the one I feel like is a little bit lesser, and that is Hinata versus Neji. This fight goes crazy. Seeing Hinata's resolve to fight Neji, but also seeing Neji's resolve to, I guess, make the main line of the Hyuga clan separate, because he is a part of the cadet branch, but Hinata is one of the main members of the mainline branch. So it's so cool to see both of their resolves clashing here, and how Hinata, though she's a very shy child, has this resolve to never back down because of Naruto, because of her idol, and to fight and keep fighting. Even with the encouragement of Naruto, she just wants to continue fighting Neji, not because Neji has harmed her or wronged her in any way. She just simply wants to do this because it is her ninja way. Her resolve has driven her to fight Neji, and Neji just wants to beat the crap out of her because of what her side of the family has done to his side of the family. So yeah, that fight was phenomenal. Then obviously everyone knows about the best of the Chūnin exams, which is the fight for Gaara versus Rock Lee. This fight is phenomenal. Seeing Rock Lee pull out all the stops but still ultimately get defeated by Gaara, because Gaara is just that more powerful. And he has a tailed beast with him. He has a Shikaku. And we see, my favorite transformation in all of Naruto is the it's not even really necessarily a transformation. Probably my favorite techniques has to do with the 8 gates, the 8 chakra gates. And seeing Lee use the gates in this is actually so cool. And seeing Lee drop the weights off him as they crash to the floor and all of that, so he ultimately gets an insane speed. And, like, it's so peak. I love this fight so much. Heck, if you don't even like Naruto or haven't even watched Naruto, I recommend you go and watch this fight, and it will get you to watch Naruto, because this is one of the best fights in all of Naruto. But yeah, so the preliminaries, and ultimately I believe there are 8 or 10 who ultimately qualify for the finals. That is Naruto, Neji, Sasuke, Gaara, Shino, Dosu, who is an Otonin, Tamari, and Shikamaru. And then Kankuro. Who does Kankuro fight? Or who was Kankuro supposed to fight? Crap, I can't remember. Well, Kankuro had to fight someone. I don't remember, but yeah. So, with that, we ultimately then see as there's a 1 month break between the finals and the preliminaries. So we see as everyone goes out, starts training. We see as Sasuke is taken by Kakashi to train after having recovered from having his curse mark sealed and all of that, and having Orochimaru interfere a bit with Kakashi trying to seal Sasuke's curse mark. But we now see as Naruto is put under the tutelage of Ebisu to learn chakra control, but ultimately Ebisu ends up kind of falling at the wayside as Naruto runs into Jiraiya, who becomes his main mentor for, like, essentially the rest of the series, because he doesn't much have many other mentors. Like, he has a Yamato later on, but, like, he doesn't have another major mentor besides Jiraiya. Jiraiya had the biggest impact, and, I guess, in Naruto's tutelage. So, we see as he runs into Jiraiya. Jiraiya ultimately ends up teaching him how to use summons, which allow him to summon massive frogs from Mount Nyaboku. And we actually see as he summons Gamabunta, who's the most powerful frog, to save himself from falling into a cavern, because Jiraiya was like, you know what? He's got to learn to use this fox demon chakra within him. So I got to deplete his chakra, but I also got to put him to a level of immense emotion so he can use this chakra. And he ultimately does this by pushing Naruto off a cliff, and then Naruto summons Gamabunta to save himself. Then we see as kind of the finals begin. So I guess I will discuss the best, because each of the final fights are phenomenal, but my two favorite personally are Neji versus Naruto and Sasuke versus Gaara. So, with Neji versus Naruto, we see as Naruto is determined to absolutely obliterate Neji because of what Neji has done to Hinata. So, we see as the fight goes out, and obviously, Neji is a prodigy. He should absolutely obliterate Naruto here, and he does very well against Naruto. And, this ultimately goes crazy. Like, we see that he does a lot here, but ultimately Naruto's able to, I guess, touch down and break into the reserves of the Nine Tails, and then he fights back against Neji. And ultimately we see as he defeats Neji by treating Neji into believing that he had been defeated by using a shadow clone. Naruto goes to the ground and hits Neji with a devious hit, and ultimately Neji is defeated here. But afterwards, we see as Neji's character grows, because throughout this entire thing, he's been mentioning about how, fate is what controls you. However, Naruto is strictly against the idea of fate. So, it's kind of seeing these two ideologies clash throughout the entire fight. And then we see as Neji afterwards gets to meet up with Hiyashi, who is Hinata's father, and tells him about what truly happened with his side of the family. So we learned that, in fact, obviously because he was a part of the cadet branch, Neji had been branded with a caged bird brand that kind of looks like a swastika. But yeah, we see as this happens. We also see as his father was killed instead of Hiyashi, who was the head of the Hyuga clan, because they were twins, and there was some trouble with the crap. It's not the Mizukage, the Tsuchikage, whoever the Tsuchikage, I don't know why I can't remember the names of the villages, but the Tsuchikages, I think it's the land hidden in the stone, but I'm not for certain, in the village, but the Tsuchikage land, they ultimately had a bit of a qualm with Konoha, which led to, because they were trying to steal the Byakugan, so they tried to kidnap Hinata, but ultimately that dude was killed. But then they were like, no, we weren't trying to do that. So they're like, no, we need recompense from the Hyuga clan, and they ultimately were like, yo, you gotta send Hiyashi. But Hizashi, who was Neji's father, ultimately stepped in. He's like, no, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do it out of my own will, and I'm going to be a good person. So he ultimately ends up sacrificing himself. And like I said, Hiyashi rebels all this Neji, and this leads to kind of a reconciling of ideas. So, then, like I said, there are other fights, like Temari and Shikamaru is a great fight as well. I love that fight, because it shows the pure intelligence of Shikamaru. Here's where we learn that Shikamaru has a IQ that exceeds 200, and we just learn how much of a phenomenal military strategist he is. But then, yeah, I'm gonna speak about the Gaara and Sasuke fight. Now, necessarily, if it weren't for this fight, then Naruto and Neji would have been my favorite fight. However, this fight is phenomenal. So we see as Sasuke, actually, his match with Gaara gets postponed for a while. And this is because he had been training with Kakashi to learn a new move called Chidori. So we see ultimately he ends up pulling up, and he's doing very well against Gaara. He's in taijutsu. He has immense speed that he's taken up in just this 1 month. And Lee, who has, due to his opening of the 5 gates, been permanently disabled, is watching this, and he's like, "Dadgum, that's impressive. That what took me so many years to acquire has only taken Sasuke a month." And we see Sasuke going about using his Sharingan, and ultimately Gaara has to end up pulling like this massive, like, protective sand dome around him, which is essentially allowing Shikaku to develop as almost he's going to be released in his full beast form. However, Sasuke penetrates this wall with Chidori, which leads Gaara to freaking out anymore. We see as one of Shikaku's arms shoot out, and then Sasuke sees Shikaku's eyes in there, but ultimately Shikaku does not end up breaking out. And then we see what's been going on in the darkness throughout all this. Throughout all this, Orochimaru has been planning, and so has Kabuto. We saw prior when Sasuke was in the hospital as Kabuto came to try and kidnap Sasuke, but ultimately Kakashi ended up warding him off. And we see other things in the hospital too. We see as Gaara attempts to kill Rock Lee because Rock Lee has love and Gaara does not. And also we get the backstory of Gaara. We learn that Gaara is... well, at least during this encounter with Rock Lee, we learned that Gaara is a child who has essentially been coddled for 7 years, had been coddled for 7 years to be a unit for the Landis, the village hidden in the sand. However, once his time passed, they tried to kill him off because he was too much of a threat and a weapon, and even his own father kept sending assassins after him, but he ultimately did not end up dying. He just went crazy, couldn't sleep because he had to keep watch. And so, throughout all this, like I said, Kabuto and Orochimaru are planning, and we see now as the Chūnin exams are brought to an abrupt stop as everyone realizes, yo, we are under Genjutsu. There are feathers everywhere. They ultimately end up breaking the Genjutsu, and we see as the Otonin, Kabuto, and Orochimaru make their move, which will be discussed in the next video I make on the Naruto manga, which is the arc of Konoha Crush, which I cannot wait to discuss because this is, I'd say it's probably my favorite arc in all of Naruto. Well, at least original Naruto. Now, I do really love the Sasuke retrieval arc because it has, I'd say, probably my favorite fight in all of Shonen. However, I do not enjoy that arc, at least when I first watched it, as much as I did this arc right here, because this arc is stupendous. It is utterly phenomenal. So yeah, I cannot wait to discuss that in the next video. It won't take me as long as it did with the Chūnin exams arc, because the Chūnin exams is the longest arc in the original Naruto manga. Or at least, like I said, the first 5 arcs. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the Chūnin exams once more. Like, I did love them. I think I enjoyed them more than when I first watched through them. Cause I thought they kind of dragged on a little bit, especially towards the later portions, because I didn't really enjoy Gaara versus Rock Lee as much as I feel as I could have, or nor the other like preliminary matches. I felt kind of glossed over them. But now, really taking my time and absorbing these, I most certainly enjoyed them to the utmost. So yeah, that's all that really is for the Chūnin exams arc of the original Naruto manga, and that's all I really have for episode 202 of Shelf Review. So, thank you very much for watching.